Did I come all the way to Argentina just to ride this one train? No, I came here for many reasons, but I totally would have. There are many reasons to visit Buenos Aires. Perhaps you want to try one of Argentina's famous steaks. Maybe you're into sports and you want to see all the places that are so important for this country's athletic history. Maybe you're fascinated by historic buildings or historic trains. If you are into this, Buenos Aires is a great place to go. There are several museums dedicated to the rich railway history of the city and the country. But you don't even need to go to a museum to ride on some really old trains. All you have to do is take the subway.
Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new Trains Are Awesome video. I'm Tom, I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm so excited to share this video with you guys today. We're going to be riding BA's subway system, specifically Line B. Now Line B has a very interesting fleet, which includes some very old Japanese trains. They were built for the Tokyo subway in the 1950s, ran in Tokyo, and then were shipped here to Buenos Aires. So I lived in Japan. I never even got to ride these because they were already retired before I even lived there. But now it's 2025. I've flown to the other side of the world from where I live to ride these old Tokyo trains in Argentina. I can't even believe it. We just gotta go.
Our journey starts at the Florida station on Subte Line B. In my last video from Argentina, I briefly rode the Subte, but since this is my first video really featuring Buenos Aires' subway system, let me give a brief overview. The Subte is a network made up of 6 lines, A, B, C, D, E, and H, with a total of 56 kilometers or 35 miles of track and 90 stations. Every year, the Subte, which is short for Subterráneo, moves 200 million passengers. Line A is the oldest line, having opened in 1913. That is really old, older than most metros in the world. And until 2013, you could ride the original Line A cars. Can you imagine commuting on a subway car a century old? They were the oldest subway cars in regular service anywhere in the world. Well, they've retired now, and now it's Line B that has the oldest subway cars in the world, I think. Anyway, Line B, the busiest of the Subte lines, is 12 kilometers or 7 miles long, with the first section having opened in 1930. It is different from the rest of the network in a few ways. Instead of being electrified at 1500 volts using an overhead wire like the other lines are, it uses a third rail. And of course, it uses special trains. Now, to find information about these trains, I do a lot of searching online. The web has a ton of great information about this subject. But you know what else the web has a ton of great information about? You. And that's not so great. Don't worry, it's time to introduce the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. Incogni is an online service that contacts data brokers and removes your information from places you don't want your information to be. This is a real problem. There are so many websites that have tons of your data. This is fully legal. They can collect and sell deeply personal stuff about you. On top of that, reports of data breaches are becoming more common every year. This means your personal data could be exposed and fall into the hands of scammers, identity thieves, stalkers, even your boss. Ugh. What can you do? Well, you could reach out to all the websites yourself and ask them to delete data. But that takes so much time. Time you don't have because you have a train to catch. So let Incogni do it for you. Signing up is so easy. All you have to do is create an account and verify your information. Right after I signed up, my dashboard showed me that they had already sent requests to 185 websites. 185. The best part, my viewers get 60% off their Incogni subscriptions. To do is enter the promo code AWESOME when you check out, or use the link in the description below. Protect your data and save money? Now that's awesome. So I mentioned that Line B uses special trains. There are actually 2 kinds of special trains, and in both cases, they are second-hand, having run in a different part of the world first. These are the 6000 series, which came from Madrid, Spain. They are actually quite controversial because they're not really compatible with Line B at all. They've had to make several expensive modifications, but that's a story interesting enough for its own video. Today, I'm looking for something Japanese, like this. This is the Eidan 500 series, built in Japan.
It's so old, but that is still a Japanese train if I've ever seen one. Oh man, I'm so excited.
Technically, it's the 300 and 400 and 500 and 900 series, but I will be referring to them as the 500 series for simplicity's sake. They were introduced in Tokyo in 1954. Yet somehow, I'm here in Argentina in 2025 waiting to ride one. We've moved a few stops over to the Pasteur station, where a clock solemnly marks the deadly July 18th, 1994 attack against the Jewish community center located nearby. Like I said before, Line B is different than the other Subte lines, and there's a good reason for that. Line B was built to connect the post office in Buenos Aires with an existing railway, the Buenos Aires Central Railway. That line today is known as the Urquiza line, and I will be making a separate video about that line in the future. But for now, what you need to know is that the Urquiza line uses standard gauge and third rail, just like how Line B uses standard gauge and third rail. In fact, at the Federico Lacroze station, there is a ramp that connects the two lines. This ramp was used between 1933 and 1952 to let mainline freight trains reach the Abasto market, and today, trains on Line B still use the ramp out of service to visit the maintenance facilities located in the suburbs on the Urquiza line. When Line B opened, it was considered quite modern. It had fare gates and escalators, and a fleet of dedicated trains. But by the 1990s, the trains on Line B were in need of replacement. When you're replacing a fleet, new trains are quite expensive. Luckily, halfway around the world, there was a fleet of standard gauge third rail subway cars that were still in excellent condition, ready for a second life. It is actually quite extraordinary that these trains came from Tokyo, of all places, because Tokyo doesn't have that many lines that fit Line B's specifications. Out of the 13 subway lines in Tokyo, only 4 are standard gauge, and out of those 4, only 2 use third rail, the oldest 2. The first subway opened in Tokyo in 1927. After several extensions, it became what we know today as the Ginza line. World War II stopped any plans to build subways beyond that, but after the war, construction started on a second line. In 1954, the first part of the Marunouchi line opened, between Ikebukuro and Ochanomizu. The Marunouchi line was built to the same technical specifications as the Ginza line, so that the two lines could share a depot and swap cars if needed. All the other lines that were built after that were built to match the specifications of the suburban railway lines that they would connect to. You can learn more about that by clicking the link above. The Marunouchi line was extended up until 1962 when it reached its current length. These trains are called the Eidan 500 series because Eidan was the common name for one of Tokyo's 2 subway companies back then. Since 2004, that company is no longer called Eidan, but Tokyo Metro, a name that might sound more familiar to you. These 500 series trains are the original fleet that ran on the Marunouchi line, meaning that the oldest of them entered service in 1954, over 70 years ago. They were replaced starting in 1988 by the 02 series cars, which were the trains that I grew up riding when I lived in Tokyo as a kid in the early 2000s. So while I've never been on these old trains before, I've literally come to Argentina to ride them, they still feel very familiar. This is undeniably a Japanese train. There are some big clues that give it away. For example, on the driver's cab window, the text still says Jominshitsu, basically crew cabin. On the outside, underneath the yellow wrap, you can see these arches sticking out, part of the original Tokyo livery. And on the interior, you have the very springy padded seating, door pocket windows, and the overall aisle-facing layout that anyone who has been on a Tokyo commuter train will immediately recognize. The doors have shorter windows, a feature that was present on a lot of the older subway cars in Tokyo. I grew up riding the 7000 series a lot, which ran on a different line, and they had these too. All these features combined make this still feel like a very Japanese train, even if the livery outside and the posters inside are Argentinian. But did you know that these 500 series are actually the reason for that? What I mean is, these trains pioneered a bunch of design elements that were revolutionary back then, but have now become an unmissable part of Japanese trains. For example, double doors. Before the 500 series, most Japanese trains had single doors, even subways and commuter trains. Or a bright livery. These trains were delivered in a bright red color scheme, compared to the boring, drab, beige and brown trains that Japan had seen up until then. These red trains immediately caught people's attention and quickly became a fan favorite. Today, Tokyo's train system has trains sporting every color under the sun. The Japanese public's love for these trains meant that they were being retired and replaced. Quite a few of them were preserved. They ended up at museums, daycares, and parks all over the country. And as we've established, some went to Argentina. 131 cars to be exact. After almost 4 decades of trusty service in Tokyo, they have been serving Buenos Aires faithfully for another 3 decades. And Line B is the busiest line in Buenos Aires, so the city literally couldn't function without these. Now, I'm not saying I came here just to ride these, but it has always been my goal to come to Buenos Aires before they're retired, which will happen probably in the next few years, so I'm really grateful for this opportunity. As far as I know, at almost 70 years old, they are now the oldest metro cars in regular service anywhere in the world. On a metro system, of course. They're older than anything in New York. The only other metro trains from the 1950s that are still running that I could find are in Pyongyang, North Korea. They're about the same age. But if you do know of any older trains, let me know, and I'll adjust the title. And fun fact, Japan loves these trains so much that some of them have been sent back to Japan. In 2016, 4 cars of these 500 series were sent back to Tokyo. It's the first case ever of a Japanese train that had been exported returning to the country. Using recycled trains in this case worked out really well for Buenos Aires. It's no surprise that they wanted to repeat this success by buying second-hand Spanish trains. But unfortunately, that was an absolute flop. Like I said, that will be the topic of my next video, so stay tuned and subscribe to Trains Are Awesome if you haven't already. So now we're at Federico Lacroze station, transfer station to the Urquiza line. Just beyond here is the connecting ramp between the subway and the suburban line. And until 2003, this was the end of Line B. But that year, 2 more stations opened, and in 2013, the last 2 stations opened, completing the line. We are not going any farther though. Though I could spend the whole day here riding these iconic Japanese trains, we have more trains to ride. We'll pay a quick visit to the Chacarita Cemetery, the largest cemetery in the city, and then it's time for some more trains. But before we go, there are a few people I want to thank. Thanks to my friends Nonstop Eurotrip and Rieles del Plata for coming along with me on the ride. Check out their channels. Thanks to my generous channel members and patrons for your support, and my viewers for watching. And thanks, of course, to Incogni for sponsoring today's video. We'll see you next time.